Okay, why don't we get started? Namaste, everyone. My name is Nikunj Trivedi, and I'm the president of CoHNA, or Coalition of Hindus of North America. We are a grassroots advocacy and civil rights organization dedicated to improving the understanding of Hindu culture and heritage in North America and working on matters impacting the Hindu community. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Hindu Parents Network, an initiative of CoHNA to bring together parents on a platform that allows for exchange of ideas and resources to foster a better understanding of Hindu practices and current issues. We also want to create a network of like-minded parents to rely upon in times of need and ensure a system of support for Hindu youth in high school and middle schools, and be a voice for change for Hindu Dharma in schools, universities, and other areas. You can find out more information about the Hindu Parents Network at www.hinduparentsnetwork.org. Today's webinar features insights and experiences from a mental health professional, a high school student, a college student, as well as parent and active community organizer on the issues around bullying and prejudice and what parents need to keep in mind. The recent bullying incident in Coppell, Texas has created a lot of news and uproar from Hindus and non-Hindu communities around the world. While this incident is not a religious one, it is a reminder that such incidents occur frequently and often go unnoticed. But not all bullying involves physical violence or verbal abuse. Today, we will also talk about bullying that goes beyond these and can have long-term consequences on one's identity and self-esteem. According to the Cyberbullying Research Center, roughly 1 in 4 Hindu kids face bullying based on their religious identities. HPN's experience working with students, parents, and schools has shown that such bullying incidents includes attack on religious customs and festivals, Hindu deities and symbol, ethnic food and dress, etc. From slurs such as dot head to cow piss drinker to curry breath to questions such as, do you worship monkeys and snakes? Why do you have a red button on your forehead? Do you eat monkey brains, etc. The list is quite long. Academic bullying is also a major problem, where curriculum and teaching materials perpetuate biases against Hindus. Often, the material portrays Hinduism and India through a lens of caste, cow, curry, and chaos, while downplaying the significant contributions of Hindu civilization to the world. When students and parents challenge these, they're often dismissed or portrayed as quote-unquote Hindutva or supporters of foreign governments and agencies. As someone who has grown up here, I have had my share of bullying and prejudice. In school, I was asked if I ate monkey brains for breakfast and why I worshiped weird gods and goddesses. A bully threw a shopping cart on me while yelling slurs about my Hindu background and my mother. In college, I got into an argument with a professor who insisted that Hinduism has castes and that white-skinned Aryans civilized India and pushed dark-skinned Dravidians to the south of India. Some people say that bullying is universal or impacts everyone. Sure, but then they say, why are we only talking about Hindus? Well, while that may be true, Hindus as minorities and as people of color whose culture is often misunderstood face unique situations that need special attention. On top of that, other communities, whether you see Muslims, Jews, Christians, etc., have created support mechanisms for students and parents in their communities, while the Hindu community lags behind significantly. In addition, parents often dismiss such incidents, forcing kids away from their culture and Hindu identity. Hence, as a Hindu organization, it is our responsibility to talk about these unique ideas and offer support where possible. I'm happy to announce that we will be creating a support group in partnership with the Hindu Students Council, the largest pan-Hindu youth organization in North America. Please visit hinduparentsnetwork.org and click on Get Involved and fill out the form under Bullying and Prejudice to report any instances and join the support groups. You can also join us as a volunteer to help run these support groups and help run HPN activities when you click on Join Us and fill out the volunteer interest form. So with that opening remark, what I would like to do is welcome our first speaker. Let me just go to her bio quickly. Dr. CoHNA Sharma. Dr. CoHNA Sharma is a trained child and adolescent psychiatrist, joined the ITM HSCA Board of Advisors in the fall of 2020. She completed a bachelor in biology with a minor in anthropology and then received her medical degree from the New York College of Osteopathic Medicine in 1999. She and her husband moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 2003. She received her general psychiatry degree in Maricopa Integrated Healthcare Systems and then completed her child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship. She has worked as an outpatient psychiatrist, treating children and adults. For the past 10 years, she has dedicated her time and experience to work with her son with special needs, something we will also be discussing today. In working with her son, she became a part of the counselors team at a private Montessori school as a consultant, working closely with teachers, students, and families. She is passionate about early education, diagnosis, and holistic approach to treating children to optimize their physical and mental development, learning, and support in the community. She continues to teach and supervise the child psychiatry fellows from the Valley Wise Medical Center in a school-based psychiatric consultation rotation. And we are also happy to have her as one of the teachers and instructors within the Hindu Parents Network's Beautiful Tree program for middle school kids. So I want to welcome Sukanya ji to her opening remarks. Maybe talk about a little bit about what are you, in your experiences, what is bullying from your sort of medical background? By the way, this is not medical advice, so I want to make that disclosure that this is not medical advice we are providing. You should seek a medical professional, as well as if you are in trouble, you should call 911 to report such incidents. We are basically just having a conversation here with a mental health professional who is deeply concerned about these issues for our community. So Sukanya ji, please go ahead.
Namaste, namaste everyone. Thank you, Nicole.
Can you please increase your volume for the mic?
Can you hear me better now?
A little bit, a little more.
Never happens, like you said, it would happen today. Any better?
Slightly better.
Wow.
Do you have a headphone by chance?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
You increase your volume, maybe. We can hear you. So go ahead, it's fine.
I'll just scream.
That's fine.
Okay. So namaste, everyone. This is, of course, a very important topic. And as a mother of a child who has special needs, it's very important to me, has been for a long time. And just to let you know, I am very, very lucky. I feel that I'm part of the Beautiful Tree program, more so than, people may think, oh, she's working with them. But no, I feel a sense of responsibility, a sense of accomplishment in passing on the information that I deem is very important in building our children's confidence and building their identity. And why am I saying this in the beginning? Because I think the crux of all of this boils down to this, both for children who get on the receiving end of bullying versus children who may bully, right? And it's got to do with that internal conversation that we have. So I'll start with what is bullying, right? We all have a sense of what it may look like, but we also have to remember as adults, as parents, that children may not know that. And bullying is described as something that is intentional, intentionally doing something. So the intent is important of what is being done or said, and that it is sustained, that it may or may not be physical, right? And it can leave the receiver with lasting effects, okay? Depending on what it is and how long it goes on and what kind of support they get. So it's not just the bullying, but what can mitigate that is the kind of support that the child gets or the person gets. So what can it look like? It can look like teasing. We tease each other as cousins and brothers and sisters growing up, or sisters growing up, or brothers. There's teasing. We know what teasing feels like, right? But it can, that there's levels of that, and it can really rev up, and it can start making the other person who's on the receiving end feel less than, right? And when, again, going back to the intention of why it's being done, when the intent is to make the other person feel bad, then that is considered bullying. It could be talking about someone so that they can hear, right? Like in a classroom setting or playground setting, what have you, or after school, so that they can hear that people are talking about them and are talking about them in a way that is negative. Again, intention, and that there's somebody on the receiving end. Now, also remember, it doesn't have to be verbal. It could be in other means, and it's taken on a totally different sort of flavor since we've had the use of cell phones and all of that, being online, having social media, and having these different apps that I can't even keep up with. That, you know, it has taken a different flavor altogether, and there's a whole different way of bullying that can happen that parents ought to be mindful of when you know that your child is using a cell phone or is online on the computer. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It's also what it can look like is when you ostracize someone. So that's another thing. So your child may or may not even know, you know, they may come home and you can, you know, ask how things went. How was your day? Don't just ask about, I would say, just what's going on in the classroom setting. Okay. Things that happen with bullying or these interactions are when kids can interact. Most kids in the classroom are not going to be talking and, you know, forming little play groups and stuff like that in the classroom. So where does it really happen? Lunchtime and recess. Those are the times that also has less of a controlled environment, because all kids are running everywhere. They need to get their energy out, and the supervision may be a little more laxed, right? So those are times, those are the things that you can ask about. And also, of course, it can escalate to the physical part of sort of the physical attacks that can happen, or tripping, let's say, or pinching, or slapping, or doing something, or poking. We've had poking incidents in our classrooms. So there's many ways it can happen. If it's sustained, then that's what's considered bullying. I wanted to talk about a little bit about who and what kind of bullying a little bit next. And that is like, when we think about boys in general, and in studies that have happened, we see that boys may be more on the physical aspect, right? They are more physical as children growing up. Boys do play differently, and girls do play differently. And not that girls cannot be physical, they can be as well. So it's not exclusive, but things to just kind of remember on a broader aspect. Then girls are seen to be more what is social bullying, where the ostracizing someone, making fun of someone as a group. And when do we start seeing this kind of differences? Young kids, they play, and not every kind of teasing is bullying. We also have to remember that you have to really look at what is the intention behind it, and how long has it been going on? Does other people in the classroom or in the play group know that there's a victim, there's going to be somebody that it's directed at, and we are the other people who are going to direct it to this. So that's talking about a power disbalance. So in bullying, we have a power disbalance. And so what does it look like when they're young kids? It could be that, you know, they're teasing, they're playing, and they find out slowly, they start getting to know their friends and peers in school, let's say, and they find out one kid is scared of something. And this is a case I'm talking about that I've seen in my office, where the child is afraid of something. And we will talk towards the end about what are some of the things that can be done in terms of helping the child. And once they figured that out, and they started teasing him for a week about that thing, and it was about an insect, and they realized that even seeing a picture of it would scare him, and so they would go around playing around him, saying that, oh, it's a scorpion, and the scorpion is, I'm a scorpion, and different kids would start becoming scorpions in the group and would go after him. And just the thought of hearing scorpion because it was a phobia that the child had, then would trigger this massive amount of anxiety in that child. So when there is an intent of trying to cause discomfort to someone, when that is considered bullying, right? And it happens over and over again. So that's just a small example. So it's not like things that we usually think about when we talk about bullying. So the reason I'm saying this is we have to have those conversations with our kids. We have to help them understand that there's different ways that someone can bully, that you could be on the receiving end or you could be doing it. So let's talk about who does bullying. It's not somebody who is necessarily, if you look at their home environment, we always say that parents are the first teachers. So what is the environment at school that is happening? But what is the environment at home that is going on? Is this something that they're exposed to in terms of a huge power disbalance between the parents? And they see this, and it's played out in front of them. And the child identifies with the one parent, the parent who is more powerful, or the child may identify with the one who is, in feeling kind of dejected and powerless. So depending on that, they may play it out that way in their school life. And that's how children learn. So we have to remember, children practice these things because they learn things that they see the people around them doing. And who are the people around them? Initially, it's the parents, right? You're growing up. That is your place of learning. And then your place of practice then becomes your school. And then a little bit about when do we really have to start as counselors, really looking at the uptake of bullying, or that type of social type of bullying may start happening is middle school. And we usually first see it in girls. Girls generally being more communicative, more social, more forming groups where they're talking and communicating back and forth. Boys will also form groups. They're playing, they're team sports and all of that. But that tends to come into the bullying aspect on the play field when there's a power struggle between players. So you might see that in boys where there's then tripping and all of that can happen. With girls, looking at who's sitting with whom at lunchtime, who's being ostracized while they're walking home, or after school kind of participation in activities. So those are some of the places. And of course, impact. We know that depending on how long it goes on, or what the child who is being bullied, what their basic construct of their personality is. You might have a child who's very resilient just because that's how they are. And their home environment is that they see parents dealing with the problems that they solve. And it doesn't have to be because of bullying or power struggle, any kind of issues, in a very calm way, in a way that seems like they think about it, they're logical, they talk to each other, parents will talk to each other, and then they'll go about solving something. Those are some things that get inculcated into the child. And of course, the social environment at home is a big thing about how children figure out how to manage issues and problems. So it's not all about only that. Now, when somebody becomes the person who's bullying, it's not necessarily somebody who feels powerful, right? It could be because they feel powerless and they want to regain that power. And the way for them to regain the power is to do something towards a peer, right? So their way of regaining that power is to make somebody else feel bad, or they can affect the emotion of someone, and then that gives them the power. So I'm going to stop there for now, and then we can talk about prevention later.
Oh, thank you for that background. I think it's a really good one. It lays out the context in terms of what we're really talking about, because it's a broad topic, and now we'll start to kind of delve more into sort of some of the other aspects based on identity and things like that. So for that, what I would like to do is I would like to call Sakshi Sharma. She's a pre-law student at George Washington University, and she's involved in various leadership positions on campus through various different clubs, and she advocates for our community. And we got in touch with each other probably about a month and a half ago or so, through some unique situations, which I don't want to talk about, but I want Sakshi to talk about, because I think a lot of parents don't realize what goes on college campuses and how this can have an impact on their children as they go from being in middle school to high school to college, etc. So Sakshi, go ahead, please.
Namaste, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and really share my perspective on what I have experienced in college recently over the past 2 months. And so I just want to start off with really talking about how it all unfolded. So it was actually a new Hinduism professor at the university, and the semester just ended. So he was really targeting me. He made Hindu-phobic remarks regarding various things. He supported colonialism. So I basically had an assignment where I made a presentation and I talked about the various geographical sites and locations from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. So that was basically, I talked about the Ram Setu, I talked about Kurukshetra, and I also talked about the Vimana. So I had scholarly papers, and also my intention was not to really portray that in a way that he thinks is different from an academic perspective, but it was really just to showcase that these are the various cultural aspects and the all of these locations based in India's culture and Hinduism in general. So what basically happened is that he basically targeted me and singled me out during class because he thought that I had Hindutva ideologies. He mentioned this in his emails. He also talked about how Muslims are oppressed in India. So again, just kind of bringing out that idea that India and Hinduism is really he just downplayed that in general. And he also joked about how Indians believed that they created math, that they had flying machines, and he used this disturbing language as well that really did mentally disturb me as an individual and really as a Hindu student as well. And I think that this is really important to talk about because there were Hindu students and Indian students in my class who also felt the same way that I did, but they were afraid to stand up because they were really just afraid of that retaliation and they didn't have that support from their parents. Again, just in our community, that aspect of grades, our academic reputation is really just accentuated and highlighted. So because of that, there were 6 to 7 Hindu students in the class and they didn't really do anything about it. They were afraid to speak up. So, I tried to convince them, but out of 5 to 6 students, there was only 1 Hindu student who was willing to speak up and go to the chair with me, along with other students who were non-Hindu and non-Indians. But turns out that the chair, really did kind of defend the professor and said that he has all of these rights. Just really aside from all of that, though, I really just want to emphasize that our community does not have that specific backbone support that we really need, that other communities have, for instance, other religions, other races. They have that support from their community, which compels them and allows them to come forth and have that unification and togetherness if there is a problem. And, there are various incidents, not only in universities, but also other places and schools that comply and really just force a student to be alone. And me in general, I'm just talking about myself, I felt very, very alone and targeted until I spoke to Mr. Trivedi ji, and he actually helped me out through the process. And I do not want any other student to go through that, because I think it's crucial for parents to support their kids and their children when they do face such an incident or experience something that really is involved and revolved around Hindu-phobic remarks and Hindu-phobia. And I think that if we really have the ability to celebrate festivals like Diwali, Holi, Dasara, all of these festivities, then we also hold the fundamental responsibility to preserve, defend, and protect our religion and community as a whole, because I think it's really essential and crucial to have that factor and really have those people that students and children can come to, that they're not afraid to speak up, even if it is really being anonymous or not. So basically, I would like to, talk about this further, but this is just really the fact that I want to emphasize unity within our community, because I think it's really, really crucial. And I want to stress the fact that we do not have that aspect, and it's lacking no matter how many doctors or lawyers or engineers that we have in our community. I think that that power is not sufficient enough if you're not doing anything to protect and to defend the students or the children or just the individuals who are being hurt in our community. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And, we'll go into some of the things about how these phenomena continues on campus, and, how it makes people feel. But I want to welcome Richa Jani. Richa is, she's going to be graduating very soon from Plano West Senior High School, and she'll be attending a 7-year med program, or DO program, I guess, next year at Missouri Southern State University. So welcome, Richa. Richa is also involved in the Hindu Students Council, and she's on the high school leadership board. And so please go ahead, Richa, and share your perspective on this topic.
Sure. Thank you, Nikunj. I can speak a lot to what Dr. Sharma said and Sakshi said about one, unity, and two, bullying in general. So I started to see most bullying in middle school. And like Dr. Sharma said, that it mostly be common upon girls and mostly in social media, so cyberbullying. And what would happen is that when someone has a problem with each other, or when two girls have a problem with each other, they wouldn't talk about it and come to a resolution. In fact, they'd post it on social media, more specifically on Snapchat, and they'd talk about the other person and with the intent for them to see it and say that, oh, I have more power than you, sort of like a power trip in that situation. And that'd be very common and be a very specific group of girls who would continue that. And again, not many girls would want to say anything about it because they're too scared to do anything, and they're more fearful of the consequences than actually coming to a resolution of the situation. So although a good solution to this would either be talking about it or going to authority or school counselor or something, again, the fact that they were too scared to even say anything about it was just weird to me, because I thought, oh, if you have a problem, then why shouldn't you go talk about it? And that's when I sort of realized that when we have that community behind us, and when we have that support system from a young age, and we're taught to how to do conflict resolution, how to avoid and prevent bullying, I think that it's very useful, especially from elementary and middle school, because students will not always know how to interact with these sorts of situations. And I think it's important that they know how to handle and confront these situations early on.
Oh, that's very true. I think it's it starts very early. I can tell you, my own daughter, she was bullied in middle school, not even middle school, in grade school, basically, right? She's in she's now going to be going to middle school, but when she was about before the pandemic, so she had to be about, I think she was in third, maybe fourth grade ish, and she was bullied on her bus by a boy on certain things and things. So she never told us, and it's just stayed there for a while. And then she ended up telling one of my best friend's sons, who then came and told us. So it was like this whole thing that came out of it. So we have to have these conversations. So thank you, Richa, for that. I want to welcome Deepa. I don't see. All right, okay.
Nikunj,
Deepa Karthik. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Namaste, Nikunj. It says that I cannot stop.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Try now. There we go.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes. So
Namaste.
Deepa is one of our volunteers in CoHNA, and she has been involved in the community in South Brunswick. And I will obviously let her introduce herself and the work that she does as a community organizer in the local areas, but also active with the school district. So please go ahead, Deepa.
Namaste, everyone, and thank you for making time for this very important conversation. Before I begin, I have to provide a disclaimer as I'm an elected board member, a school board member. So thoughts I'm presenting today are purely my own, and they have no bearing on the elected position that I hold. But these are purely my personal thoughts and opinions. Okay, so Nikunj, I want to thank CoHNA and Hindu Parents Network from the bottom of my heart for bringing out this very important topic. This is a topic that is worth discussing and deliberating on, and I think we haven't paid enough attention to it. I think there are a couple of points that I want to address, and I want to draw some of my talking points from whatever Dr. Sukanya spoke about, as well as Sakshi and Richa. So I think a couple of things that that I have observed as a community worker and and a person who's engaged within my community is that as Hindus, as a group, I think the first thing that we that we are sort of missing and not doing very, very well at this point is speaking up, right? So that is that's one of the things that we don't do. And I know I'm speaking very broadly here, but I think the first thing that we lack is engagement. And when I say speaking up, I bring engagement in that picture, because it's very important for us as a community to engage with our community as a whole. We engage very well within our microcosm. We bond very well with our with our Indian neighbors and our Hindu friends, and we do all of that very well. But on a broader scale, we lack consistent engagement. And I know this sounds sort of a little harsh, but it is true. And that is the reason we are not able to sort of bring forth some of the issues that we are facing. I know when I discuss the issue of bullying, it always comes across like, oh, but bullying is irrespective of race and religion. That is true. It is a very universal topic, and it touches every section of society. There is no taking away from that. It is undisputed that bullying is a universal phenomenon. However, every section of society experiences bullying in a different way. And my experience is not the same, or may not be the same as somebody else. By that I mean, if I am a Hindu and if I have been bullied consistently as a child who's praying to a god with an elephant head, or who prays to a monkey, that experience is not common to a kid who's in the school but from a different culture and background. So these specific incidences are only sort of specific to our community and must be spoken about, and we must know how to handle these. So a couple of things I wanted to speak about is in my in the past I have come to observe that Hindu and Indian parents, and I'm going to use the word interchangeably, do feel very badly about the fact that their children are getting bullied, but many of them stand back or hold back from bringing complaints out formally. And there is no way that any system or institute can address complaints if they are anonymous. And there is no way to do that. The only way to do this is that we have to gather the courage, we have to put pen to paper, and we have to make sure that we formalize our complaints, vocalize them. You can speak in forums that are available to you, but it cannot be an anonymous. There cannot be an anonymous aggressor and an anonymous victim. So this is very important. I've noticed many times that parents are willing to explain incidents, and they're willing to sort of speak about it in a very private forum, but when it comes to putting pen to paper, they shy away. This is a very important issue. I think it's very important that what happens here is when we refuse to do that, our children are watching us. So they know that we are not being brave enough for them. So that is sort of we are letting them down if we do that. We have no choice but to be brave for them. And I think that this concept of if I complain, there will be retaliation, I think is slightly misplaced. I do empathize with parents parents or caregivers or whoever is in charge of the child feels that there might be such a such a situation, but it is my belief that there are enough safeguards in a system to protect retaliation to the victim. So it is worth being brave. but these are my thoughts, and that's how I've always lived, and it's easy for me to say. I can imagine that, but I would encourage all parents and all parents, caregivers, uncles, aunts, grandparents, if they have seen such incidents, please do not shy away from being vocal. That is the first thing I wanted to say. The other thing I think I want to say is that please listen to your children. And this is my personal experience. I have 2 daughters. There are small incidents of microaggressions that you will notice that will occur in their interactions with their friends, and they will be highly innocuous. It may seem to you, but please pay attention to these microaggressions, because microaggressions keep building, and then that's how the children get bullied. So please pay attention to them. Do not dismiss your children, and don't say, oh, you may have done something, so that's what provoked the other person's reaction or things like that. Please do not do that. I don't know if I've ever been guilty of that, but I try to pay a close attention to what my children are saying. I had a similar incident like Nikunj, and we handled it well, is what I would say. The first thing do not dismiss your children. If they're telling you something, please listen to them. In all likelihood, it might be leading somewhere. There are 3 things that I think as a community we need to do. We need to engage, we need to build, and we need to change. And I'll build upon these 3 talking points a little bit. When I say engage, I say do not react only if the incident is happening in your house. Please build networks. Build a community network where you can build allies, and make sure that you are making friends across universal issues such as bullying. If we live in our microcosms, it's not going to help us. The second thing is build consistently. It can't happen that just because there is one hot button issue, we are all sort of huddling together and trying to address it. These conversations need to consistently happen across a longer period of time, and they need to consistently keep happening. And the last thing I'd say is that please work towards actions that will bring about change. If you feel that in your community there is a certain resistance to an idea that why do you do such a thing? Why do you pray to a monkey god? Why do you pray to a god who's got an elephant head? Please engage with those questions. Explain. If you explain, people are willing to listen. I think a lot of the misconceptions come from the fact that we are not willing to listen. We're not willing to explain, and then we believe we are not, because what is the point of explaining, because others will not be listening anyways. I think this is sort of it's a fallacy, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, which I think we should try and avoid. So 3 main things and 3 takeaways of my observation of all the work that I've done is please engage, please build, and please work towards actions that change.
Thank you for that, Deepa. What I would like to do is I want to bring everybody on the screen. So if you can do that, Aditya, so we can have a kind of an open Q&A. So I want to start with Sukanya ji. There was this idea of microaggression. Can you maybe talk about what microaggression really is?
First, I want to say, Deepa ji, you mentioned so many great things. The consistency. Yes, there's microaggression. And what I would like to do is take a live example from her, if she would be willing to talk about what happened. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. This is not specific to my own child, but this is somebody that I did hear from, who said that, my child was 3rd grade or something, this person's child, and said that, he got teased by somebody consistently for praying to a god who has got multiple hands and sits on a tiger and all kinds of things. Basically, like, why do you have so many gods? Like, who is your god? Like, you don't have one god, you have so many gods. Like, so and why does your god have a funny thing in his hand? Or like, why is there a little mouse at the bottom of your god? Like things like that. And so this parent came and told me, and I was really, really shocked, and I was upset as well. And I said, you should take this up. Like, this is not something that you want to, it's not a discussion between just two children. Always remember that, third graders and second graders are not bringing this information through their research and through their information. It is coming from somewhere.
Yep.
So realize that, like, why would an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old even raise this question to another kid whose culture he's not very familiar with? So that is number one. The second thing is this particular incident built on, and where the person said, oh, in my child's class, the teacher keeps saying that my faith is amazing, my faith is, and these are little kids, like, first graders, second graders, I would not, I'm so happy to be so and so, that my faith is great. So they seem very innocuous statements, but we have to be careful about that. So we have to pay a little bit closer attention, Sukanya ji. That's what I was trying to say. Yes.
So microaggressions are, just as you said, some of those things that seem like, oh, it's coming out of curiosity, but then there is that little layer of how can I sort of still create that tiny little bit of that power kind of disbalance that is happening. And I feel that microaggression is a misnomer. We call it microaggression. It's nothing small about it because it's very additive, and it has quite an impact on the receiver. And I've met someone like that in medical school. Unfortunately, he was also from the same state that the recent case is from. Just given the fact that he was the only Indian student in his class, he received this kind of, it was more overt at times, talking about his skin color, talking about the food, the smell of the food, or whatever that they would hear. And again, like you said, Deepaji, it comes from somewhere. They've heard some of these ideas of, oh, that is funny, so-and-so's culture is funny, from somewhere else, and usually somewhere else is some adult around them, whether it's at home or church or wherever they practice, or they get together and talk about their community. So this can have an additive effect of where the person starts disliking their own identity and what they come from. And that's exactly what we saw with this young, friend of ours. And he changed his name. He didn't even want to be called by the Indian name. It became anglicized, and he did not want to associate with anything Indian. No Indian food, no, definitely wouldn't go to any celebrations with us and things like that. So it impacts children's lives more than we realize, and that can stay inside. So microaggression can be pretty significant. It is significant. And usually the nature of it is that it will keep happening, and it will, and when not called out or made, you don't make the other person aware of what they're doing is not appropriate, it will continue. And we will continue to see that it will victimize others around them as well. Because when bullying happens, it's not only to the person who it's directed at, it can be to people around them as well, because it can affect kids who watch bullying.
Yeah.
And
so on that front, actually, I want to bring in Richa. Richa, I know like this is kind of in high school, you see this happening. You had mentioned about social media. Give us, maybe share your example. Have you seen something like this happening in your school, or if through the general HSC network that anybody has seen? Maybe you want to share some examples, and then kind of how does it make you feel, right? If it has happened to you, if you experience it yourself, or you have a friend who experienced something like this, how did it make you feel or make them feel?
Right. I think that I don't think I've experienced it personally, but I've definitely heard my friends and others talking about it. There's definitely instances where certain minority and Hindus mostly are too shunned of their own culture and religion to even talk about it and bring it up. And that's why, like, when I started the HSC chapter at my high school, it was very hard for me because people just didn't feel like, oh, that they belonged or that they thought it was important, because even though we are like a mostly diverse school and there's a lot of Hindu kids, they weren't proud of their identity because it's just not common, and it's not common to talk about it and to practice it. And so students were really uncomfortable. So I think sort of cultivating that environment and publicly being okay with it and being proud of who you are and accepting others as well is also really important, because yeah, you can feel proud of yourself, but others aren't going to feel the same way if you're not acting the same way towards them. So make sure you are yourself are being proud of your identity and helping others and accepting others as well.
Yeah, and I would say acceptance goes both ways, because you can accept others, but others have to accept you, and it cannot be on unequal terms. So if you're going to accept others based on what their religious beliefs are, what they wear, what they eat, how they, what is sacred to them, things like that, others have also to accept your belief or your practices, your what you hold sacred, things like that. And I find that power structure, that sort of, it's not very equal. There's already like there are certain surveys that shows, most Americans don't even know a Hindu, right? There's like 1 in, I think, 5 people who may know a Hindu or something like that out there. So that's there. And then on top of that, you find like these types of lack of support. So when kids show up in schools, they don't really want to be a Hindu. Like the H word is like almost like a curse word or the forbidden word that you don't want to bring out. And I've seen this when you start to talk about it, it's almost like, oh, no, we can't be a Hindu, let's not talk about being a Hindu, right? So there's a reason behind it. There are many reasons behind it, so which we obviously can talk about. But more importantly, I want to kind of talk to Sakshi about kind of, do you echo that sentiment from Richa? Like, you were once obviously in high school, and then coming to college, you're from sort of like a different state where there's not a huge amount of Hindu population. There are pockets of it, but what have you experienced growing up?
Right, of course. No, definitely. Just reinforcing everything that Richa did mention. Yes, coming from Virginia, I live in Virginia. So we have it's not really a diverse community, but then, so it's diverse, but then simultaneously, we have a little bit of, like there's a population that's not really Indian or Hindu. But from what I have experienced in high school or elementary school or even middle school, I have honestly not really experienced much hatred. But my brother has, when he was in first grade, actually, there was this one student who constantly, really targeted him and singled him out and talked about all of these, how he's a Hindu and how she was white. So really just that impact, because that school, that elementary school, it was mainly a white school. So there wasn't really a lot of diverse population. And my parents really talked to the teacher, and turns out she was, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about it. The students' parents are lawyers or attorneys. So it was just really that aspect that, okay, like we just have to kind of shove it under the rug and just keep it there. So I think that really personally, I have not experienced that, but I do know that there were instances where people were really, I think I would say, curious about my culture. And when there would be, some like international nights, but I think that I don't really have much to speak about though from high school and various other previous grades, because there were international nights. There were instances, because in school, when you do have classes in high school where they talk about Hinduism, I also think that there is mainly that caste element where that's really just the thing that's really focused on the most, and it's just heavily emphasized to a very, very certain degree. But on top of that, I do actually have a professor he taught Hindus and Buddhism last semester, and I was in his class, and he actually provided teachers with a lecture and a training on how to properly teach Hinduism courses in high school. So I think that's very interesting. I think that we should really have more of that, just to kind of vocalize the education and the course around Hinduism in high school, middle school, and elementary school as well.
No, that's wonderful. And I think so you do have some of these teachers and instructors and educators who do consider the aspect of mutual respect and understanding and things like that. And we need to really build bridges with those types of allies across the board, right? Doesn't matter what background they come from. So I think that's a really good point. Now, just kind of sticking to you, Sakshi, on let's kind of look at the college scene, right? What do you see in the college scene? Like, you obviously your experience is there, but when you see certain things in social media, or when you see certain like narratives around caste or things like that, like what have you been observing on campuses that if you want to share?
Of course. So throughout, the university, throughout GW, we have various organizations. So we have the Hindu Students Association, we have the Indian Students Association, and those are really just comprised of, our identity and culture, and really honing in and emphasizing that to create that environment. But when it comes to advocacy, and when it comes to these issues pertaining to bullying and Hinduphobia, it's not really emphasized enough. There's just these organizations and associations focus on celebrating these holidays, or just going out and just doing Diwali festivals, holy festivals, and all of these things, but not really emphasizing and going in to the incidents that might occur in school and on campus. But just the college scene in general as a whole, I think it's really important to recognize and acknowledge, because it is the academic environment. And this is where academic freedom comes into play. Mentioning, going back to my experience, the department chair, the chair of the religion department, she actually mentioned academic freedom and just really justified the professor's racist and discriminatory remarks by academic freedom. So I think that just in college in general, it's just that scholarly approach that is being defended, and just the academic freedom that really people tend to vocalize and just kind of use as a way to defend all of these actions and incidents against us and our culture.
Yeah, and I echo that sentiment. I mean, I've been part of Hindu Students Council for many years. And with CoHNA and HPN, we have seen many students who get concerned about these things, because a typical curriculum, a Hinduism curriculum, always has to focus on caste, right? One word, and people think that this is the first seminar we have done or webinar, but this is not our first one. When we did one last year, one of the students, high school students, remarked that in her textbook, in that one chapter on Hinduism in India, the word caste was mentioned 33 times. Okay. So the only thing that you really learn is Hindus have castes, and oh, by the way, there's a hierarchy of a pyramid, and the people at the top always oppress the people at the bottom. So this the sort of a reductionist, simplistic nature that attaches Hinduism to oppression and backwardness, things like that. That's the part that really has a damaging, sort of like, I would say, damaging impact on Hindu identity. And that then gets carried over into college as well, because when you start to take some of these classes, that that theme starts to perpetuate and permeate. But then recently what has happened is these things have now started to become legislation or policies. So first of all, there's already a misconception about Hindu Dharma, but then you start to see that people are pushing for policies based on faulty data. And now all of a sudden Hindu students are being targeted, or will be targeted potentially, or even faculty members, for simply being a Hindu. So as I was talking to some students, they basically said that, hey, I am afraid to even celebrate my festivals, because if I celebrate Diwali, someone's going to say, well, Diwali is casteist. Okay. In fact, this happened in UC Davis, where another organization called the Other Collective put out an Instagram message saying why people should not celebrate Diwali, because Diwali is a casteist, violent festival. By celebrating this, we're endorsing violence against minorities, Muslims, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Dalits, Adivasis, etc. I mean, this is the kind of like narrative that you start to see. And this, what most people don't realize is this might be like, oh, what's the problem with an Instagram message? no, this stuff goes viral, and it starts to really impact students who are really feeling, they're on Instagram all the time. So we need to be much more careful about that. So, that happens. But, obviously this is a very long conversation. Academic Hindu phobia is something that we actually have a workshop on that we will be doing again over the next few weeks. So watch out for that. This is a really important topic. But I want to kind of shift a little bit, and I want to talk about kids with special needs, right? Sukanyaji, your experience working with kids with special needs is really important, because I know people have asked that question. Well, we talk about Hindu kids, we talk about this, but what about kids who are Hindu but who have special needs? So what are your thoughts on that? How does that impact kids who are in that category, and your experience there?
So yes, I do have a lot of that, lived experience with that with my child. And just to talk about in general about special needs, like you can look at someone, may know that they might be different in terms of the way they process the world around them, okay? Or you may look at them and they look normal. They look normal, they sound normal when they speak most of the time. So you might not even know that there is something going on, that they perceive the world differently, right? And once they realize there's something a little bit different, and I'm talking now about autism spectrum, because this is something that, has taken on a different it's changed the school environments too. And we've seen that in the school system as well, as we navigate and try to still figure out what is the best approach. So you might take a kid on the spectrum and look at them. If they're very highly functional, you may not be able to tell at all, even as adults. It takes a while to figure out, and teachers are good at that now, and they're getting, as we're learning more and more. The thing is that these children cannot come and tell you, right? They cannot come home and tell you so-and-so did something. As it is, kids may not complain. Even a child who's neurotypical may not come home and say, like you have said, Nikunji, you found out from somebody else's, your friend, their child said something. So neurotypical kids may not say something either. They may not say because they don't want the parents to worry. They don't know that it might be bullying, but it is affecting their internal, kind of processing and the way they look upon themselves. So in terms of the special needs kids, it's just as a general approach for any parent who has a child who has special needs. We always say, you have to be that squeaky wheel. Because if you're not that squeaky wheel, and you don't have to be aggressive, and you don't have to, turn into this, helicopter mom, but if you don't let the school know that, hey, I am aware of what's going on, and this is also coming to the school and saying, hey, this is what my child has, this is what he can or she can react to in this way versus that way. And if he does this, doesn't mean he's being disrespectful to the classroom or to the other kid. So kind of unfurling the mystery behind your child is important. So I've had with my kid, I would have beginning of every semester, I would have a classroom, sort of facilitated by the other counselor, because I would represent my kid as a parent in there, and just ask questions, have the kids ask questions. What does he have? What is going on? Why does he act like this? Why does he do this? Why does he not respond to us sometimes? Why is he always off doing his own thing? Why doesn't he want to sit next to us during lunchtime or what have you? So just letting them know, and, and I would say the same thing when it comes to the culture that we come from. Right. So now you have a child who has special needs and has a background that is different from most people in the school. Luckily, this it was a private school, and it's a private school and owned by an Indian lady. So there's a lot of international things that they do. They have multiple times a year, you do an international night, and a day, actually the entire day is spent doing that. You bring in food, you talk about a specific nation in your classroom. So there's a lot. So, kind of unfurling things, demystifying things, I would say, for especially as Hindu parents, right? Going in and talking and offering to say, hey, you know, when you talk about this aspect of our culture, or if you're, you know, you're talking about history of India, if you want any help, I can help with whatever it is that you want, so that you know what you know how it should be represented, and you unfurl those things for them. And be open and ask them to ask questions. Sometimes we shy away from questions, right? You may not have the answer, and you let them know, hey, I'll find out and I'll let you know. I've been wondering about that myself. So because kids can ask amazing questions. Sometimes I'm floored with the questions that they ask me, like, I never thought of that again. You know, I've never thought of that before. So just being in contact is very important. Don't be that parent who is just picking the kid up at, you know, the line of cars that's line up to pick up the kid. Connect, get involved with the school, and you know, respond to things. Those emails that go out, volunteer for the school. If they know the face of the parent, that there is a parent who's engaged and wants to be part of the school community, then you will see that things move a little bit differently for you. So.
Yeah, and I would say the Sikh community, the Muslim community, and the Jewish community have done a great job doing that, getting engaged, getting involved, so that when you see a face that is different from the typical face you may encounter, you naturally start to ask questions, but also start to appreciate them, not for who they are from their skin or their outside look or what they really believe in, but also what they can contribute. Right. And I think that is where I can give an example. So I was in before the pandemic, the governor of New Jersey had a meet and greet in New Jersey, Central Jersey here, in one of the towns. And I was invited by the community to come. So I went there. If you look at the makeup of that, it was in a school, by the way, it was in a high school. And it was about probably 300-400 people or so there. If you look at the makeup of the audience, okay, there were different communities, right? So for example, you had the Sikh community, you know, about 15-20 with, you know, dressed in turbans and like the traditional attires and things like that, let's say. You had the Muslim community, about probably 70 or 80 Muslim, you know, sort of community members came there, maybe up to 100, let's say. But a lot of the women were wearing traditional, you know, whether it's the hijab or any of the traditional outfits. So you can really make out. And when you saw the Hindus, you literally had like really no, I mean, 15 maybe Hindus. And they were, you know, maybe one auntie was dressed in sari or something like that, but there was no way you could tell the Hindus, right? And they were interspersed, they were not even around. And I noticed that these communities, right, were very interested in engaging with the governor on issues that mattered to them, while the Hindu community was interested in taking selfies. I will pause there for 2 seconds for people to reflect that. The Hindu community was interested in taking selfies, while the other communities went to the staffers, they introduced themselves, they took their cards and say, hey, how can we talk to you about this issue or that issue, etc. While the Hindu community was taking a nice phone and saying, ah, look, I met the governor, you know, like just turning around and taking a selfie. Unfortunately, that's karma. You know, when it starts to come to bite us, then we can't complain that no one's listening to us because we were busy taking selfies while other people are busy engaging. So we must engage. We need to be part of the community. So thank you for bringing that up, Sukanyaji. But Deepa, the question to you is, what is your experience in terms of engagement? I know you've had some struggles yourselves, but also what resources might be available?
So Nikunj, I think you brought up you provided the example, and I hope the example caught everybody's eye because this is a very important, it seems like a very innocuous, very innocent, like everybody's dressed in a very sort of, a fashion that we can mingle in. But if you observe, and you made the right observation, everybody comes to such a gathering carrying their identity very proudly, and which we kind of shy away from. And sometimes I do struggle with understanding why we do so. But without going too deep into that psychology of it, maybe I think all I can say here is that every opportunity you have in the community, and there are various, in your own towns, you'll have various committees, commissions that you can be part of, you can volunteer. Every township has a sort of a record of all the committees and commissions they have. Please be engaged with those. You can just the way it works in this town, I believe, is you can nominate yourself to volunteer, but every town may differ. So please engage with these forums. Engage with your school boards, engage with your town council, engage at every level, engage politically if you can, socially, stand up for issues that are important to your community. And please, for heaven's sake, do not dismiss your own community people when they bring up certain issues. If they're saying something, please pay attention. If you don't have anything positive to say, at least do not add to the negative flair of the conversation. And as you can see here, Richa and Sakshi, both they are our future, right? And if they feel like we don't have their back, then where will they go? So just reflect on that for a moment. If they feel like that our religion is no longer worth standing up for, then what is going to happen to the coming generations if we don't stand up for them? So we bear a great responsibility. Unfortunately, we cannot run away from it. We shouldn't run away from it. So give courage to each other. So if I have my fellow Hindu who is being sort of unfairly treated on something, please give them at least give them a listening ear. If possible, join them in the action that they should be taking. Give them support. The other thing that I can say, Nikunj, is our engagement has to be constant. We are establishing ourselves here. I had this discussion very recently with somebody, and this person said to me, the reason why we need to put so much effort is we are not established yet. Some of the communities that we are speaking of who have established themselves have been doing so. They have put in a lot of work in it, and they have done it very consistently. They have put three things behind it. They have put in a lot of money behind it. They have put in a lot of effort, and they have been consistent, and they are now reaping some of the benefits of that. So please, I do not see any other way. The only way we can sort of make some changes, be consistent, donate generously, and actively participate.
No, thank you. Yeah, I fully agree with you that the participation is so critical. And I it starts from young age. We can't take these things just lightly. And it's part of the process. This is a fun part of the process once you get involved. Proactive advocacy is very important. A lot of times people get scared of this word advocacy, and they think it's political, and I don't want to be involved in politics. It's not political. Advocacy essentially means to stand up and talk about issues your community is facing. If you don't do that, nobody else is going to talk about it. Don't expect some savior to come and help you and save you and stuff like that. And don't expect other people to deal with your problems. I just gave an example earlier to somebody with a bullfighter in an arena. Okay. A lot of times what happens is some of us become the bullfighters, where you have people cheering you ahead, guys saying, hey, you go ahead and you do stuff. Oh, good job. You're doing stuff. You're doing great. You're doing great. But when I say, okay, well, what about you? No, I can't. I don't have time, or this is not for me. This is politics. I don't think I want to be in politics. There's a thousand excuses that show up all of a sudden. And it's like, when you go into the forest and you see a bear, you're trying to face the bear and everybody else runs away, so it's like that happens. And I know Deepak can empathize with that too. So Kanyaji, you probably empathize with that too. So this is the type of things that we need to change. And our kids are our future. So if we don't do that, we're not going to be able to come to that sort of like a long-term effect that a lot of other communities are facing and benefiting from now. And we're seeing that. And I'm sure Richa and Sakshi can add to that too, that when they see their fellow, let's say your friends, Muslim kids or Sikh kids or Jewish kids, etc., they don't have to worry about, like, all of a sudden, or a Chinese kid, when a Chinese kid comes up and says, I'm Chinese, he all of a sudden doesn't have to give get excuses for why the Chinese government is like oppressing Uyghurs, or why China is communist, or why communists have executed all these people and so on. There's nothing like that. But, as Sakshi had mentioned earlier, right, when she started to talk about Mahabharata, and she was just stating facts from the text and not her own perspective, she started to be called like, oh, you are Hindutva, or you are this, or you're that, and maybe Sakshi, you can add to that. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but what are your thoughts on that part? Like, do you see other kids from other religions feeling more confident than Hindu kids?
Yes, for sure. Definitely. I think that it really does depend. Because I was also talking to Mr. Trivedi about this as well. If this was an incident happening with another race or another religion, for instance, then it would be a different story. There would be protests outside, the organizations would be taking part, there would be news articles all over the place. So I think that definitely, and that is really just the aspect and element that is lacking very, very heavily within our community. And it's really, really crucial to bring that together and to kind of just really glue in the aspects that how is this happening? Is this because of ignorance? Is this because we are just not together? There's not that sense of unity? Or is it just all in all, just kind of laziness or just the unwillingness to take part in supporting our community as a whole? So definitely just going off of what you said, for sure, there are other communities who are handling these situations much, much better than we are. And just to speak on that.
Oh, wonderful.
Nikunj, if you don't mind, if I can just make one small point.
Yeah.
See, there is a lot of, I hear this repeatedly, that there is, that there is a lot of apathy in our community. We have a lot of apathy. I keep hearing this and everybody feels like I'm not apathetic, the other Hindu is. Somehow I am so concerned. I am actively involved in all of these discussions that are happening on all of these various forums, and I respond. And so I'm not apathetic, but somebody else is. The thing here is, I think what we need to understand is there is a level of engagement we can do with our own people. Otherwise, we will be in an echo chamber. I'm talking to Nikunj is responding to me, because we both agree with each other's thoughts, so we feel like we are protected. But in reality, it's far from the truth. So, I want to alert my fellow Hindus who may feel sort of this sometimes, and I do feel it too, because I feel I'm part of CoHNA. I feel like I volunteer my time here and there, and I feel like maybe this is a false sense of security. I think we have to pay attention to a lot of broader aspects, especially what's happening in our universities. Please do not brush this aside as, oh, I pay my taxes, so it's all going to be fine.
Yeah, no, very good point. Exactly. Richa, let's talk about a little bit maybe about your when you work with a lot of people in Hindu Students Council. You've been involved in that for a couple of years now. How do you guys talk about this? Like, are you guys having discussions around these types of topics in HSC?
Definitely. I think that we always end up talking about the root of these sort of problems. And I think it's that we all have agreed that it's the misinformation and the stereotypes that have been put out on social media and throughout history in these textbooks. And that's why we're having such a hard time sort of fixing that and correcting all that information. And a big thing that we talked about is just calmly informing others and being aware of the people that you have around you and having that support system again. And sort of a saying that I like to compare it to is that if you attack one of us, then you attack the whole community, sort of thing. And I think that if you sort of keep that in mind, then it's easy to think of an attack on a fellow Hindu or a peer as an attack on yourself, and that will help bring that support and resources. And I think in these situations it's okay to victimize yourself, because that's what's happening. So I think that, again, with that unity and support, that's what we've mainly talked about, and that's really important to confront these issues.
Wonderful. There are a few questions in the Q&A, so I want to start to take those. Let's start with one question was, how do you deal with, like, basically we talked about Hindus versus non-Hindus, or outside. How do you deal with when the bully is a Hindu, for example, making fun of like someone who's a vegetarian, someone who's non-vegetarian making fun of like someone who's vegetarian, right? That's so when a bully is a Hindu attacking another Hindu kid and making fun of them for whatever part of their culture, subculture, whatever it is, region, whatever. So maybe Sukanya ji, what are your thoughts on that? How do you deal with that?
So I think back, I've had I went to school in India till 5th grade. So I kind of think about those aspects, and I've seen sort of the devastation that's happened. And when I look back, because I see my brother who's older than me, and his view of him being a Hindu or Indian, it's evolved over time. But when he was young and we first came here, he went to a Catholic missionary school when he was young there. And unfortunately, my brother, when he was a kid, had to be in boarding school because my parents moved so much. So his outlook on, and this is in India, so he's surrounded by people who look like him, sound like him, eat the way he does at home and all of that. Yet that boy, as a child, had this shame about being a Hindu, living in Hindu India, you know? So you can imagine how much I think the environment plays a role of what, especially as you're growing up. That has a huge thing to do with it. And so Hindus, where it's like any other person, if you see a white kids bully each other, Black kids bully each other, it's the same way. When you take all of that out of it, those human aspects, those human aspects of our personality and the things we do to each other, they're the same across the board. It just changes flavor. It just changes flavor. I would approach it the same way if, a parent came with their kid, talking about this, I would approach it the same way. One of the things that I always do say is teach your children about what is bullying. They may not even know what bullying is. So they may not know this microaggressive things are going on. I didn't know that until I started, reading about stuff and then I would think, I was like, wait a minute, they did that to me. Oh, they said that to me. So that's what it was, because I do remember the feeling that was brought up in me when that happened. That stays with you. So again, I would, for those things, I treat it that way. Now, if it's happening here, right, in the school system, I haven't come across that because I just live in a state where there are not that many of us. There's enough of us, but not enough where we've seen some of that. There's layers of that. I think it would be too much to go into why it may happen between Hindus, one to the other. But on the surface, the approach is the same. The approach is the same. Teach your children what it feels like. Notice, be observant, like Deepaji said, be observant. Don't minimize how your child is feeling. Okay. If your child says something or you see a change in them, be observant about, has there been a change over the month or so with the way my kid is, how much they're spending time in their room, how much they're not talking to their friends or going to whatever activities, or they're feeling sick, or they're refusing to go to school. Okay, they may have witnessed bullying, they may be a bully, or they could be because they're on the receiving end of bullying. So be observant and ask open-ended questions. One of the things I always tell parents, we do parenting classes at the school, it's hard for, you can ask, and this goes from even at a young age. So how was school today? It was good. You pick up your kid. What did you do? Nothing. A lot of parents will say, you ask us like, wait a minute, you go to school every day and you do nothing? How much nothing are you doing? What are you going to school for? So learn to ask questions around it. It's like, hey, what would you change today? If that's one of the questions that I always, it's like, so how was your day? It was good. Da, da, da. Did anything fun happen? Okay. So how was lunch for you today? How, do you have homework? All the usual questions that we ask. And then I would say, it's like, if there was something you could change about today, what would you change? You might get nothing, or one of those days you'll get, da, 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 I saw this, that. And so, and you don't have to solve anything, just listen. First thing I tell parents, don't try to solve it for them right then and there. Or minimize it. Oh, that's nothing. At something they've opened up, please open it, keep it open-ended, and ask them more. How does it feel? Another thing I say is, Don't try to get all the things out right then when you first get home or what have you. A best time to get a kiddo is right when they're about to go to sleep. You know, you lay next to them, the lights are out or the light is dim, and you talk. And as they get older, sometimes it's more unnerving for them to talk to you face to face. I usually won't sit even in my therapy sessions, I'll sit next to a kid. So we're looking at something or we're playing something, like just passing a ball back and forth mindlessly while I talk. So it's easier for them to just kind of ease into it. So those are some of the tricks that, I kind of went way over than what you asked.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate the comments. I think those are very good sort of observations and tips. And, we'll continue to, this is not the be all end all, right? The support group that we are starting, these will be the conversations to be had. It could be a 15-minute conversation or a 2-hour conversation. There's a lot of different conversations to be had with our children. Sometimes while driving, sometimes while just playing, all the things that you're talking about. And then one question was like, how soon do you start, right? I think you have to start very early. I mean, the moment they start to comprehend and understand sort of conversations, right? It could be, you don't have to say, oh, what are you bullied? But it's more about like, hey, what was this? How, like you said, what was one thing you can change? Tell me 2 fun things you did today, whatever it is. Even small kids in first grade, second grade start to understand that language, right? And I think, but one of the questions that I have is, we're talking about bullying a lot, but what about the bully? What if your child was the bully, right? What do you do then? How do you inculcate the right values? Here we're talking about just the fact that somebody got bullied, but what if your child was the bully, right? How do you deal with that, Sukanya?
That's a great question. Because often we come at it when something happens and we're like, uh-oh, red flag. But the same thing now, because even if it's a child who, let's say, is popular, and we've seen this, where they're popular, but then you start hearing things about the cliques formed with girls, right? In middle school, they have their cliques and they have their groups, and one person is being ostracized. And then, it comes back to the teacher, then the parents are involved. And who is it? Oh, it's the popular girl who is doing it, right? Why would that be? She's already popular. Well, what would she? So us being humans and unique, each one of them, each one of us, you don't know how the environment is interpreted within oneself. And it's colored by what they see and how adults, again, it starts early, how the adult around them deals with issue or solves problems, and what their personality makeup is. Are they aggressive? Is mom aggressive? Is mom a pacifist? Or they minimize everything, right? And the child is feeling like they're not heard. But there are some things that are good, that are strong about this kid. And now they can play that out, and they sort of fill their cup up when they go to school by doing something to somebody else. So again, it comes back to, of course, let adults handle it. I would always teach my child and teach the child about bullying. So if you are a bully, if that's what comes back as a parent to me, like your child is doing this and this, talk to them, teach your children about bullying and teach them about the impact, because what they might be deciphering soon is that there's a confidence issue in that child. And my child who's bullying, they're doing this because they don't feel like they are fulfilled for whatever reason. Okay, so again, comes back to looking at what else can we do as adults around them to help them get past that and to understand their impact on others, because that's everything. Everything that we may or may not do directly to someone also has impact on somebody who's watching, because there are times when we've had at school a kid who does most things well, all of a sudden becomes part of this group and starts being the helper of the bully and is now bullying because they want to fit in, right? They want to fit in. So if they want to fit in and be part of the crowd, they'll start doing it too. So teaching children about bullying at home, at the school level. So we always talk about that if there are cases that are happening more often, as school personnel, we would have those conversations with the kids.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
There was one question that that came up about ostracizing, since we were talking a little bit about that. And somebody asked, how do you deal with that? What do you do to help for the kiddo? This goes for every, of course, parent, and we know this. Know your kids' friends, right? And you don't have to go, it's like, okay, give me a list of all the kids that you sit with at lunch. Okay, and who do you hang out with? You don't have to do that. But as you talk, as your child grows, find out who are their friends, right? And then help your child to have those connections. Engage them and tell them and encourage them to do what they love. Because doing those kinds of things, especially with kids who are shy, who don't warm up so easily, or have some of those social issues, if they're engaged in a video gaming club or a robotics club, they'll build their tribe there. Okay. And if that happens to be in the schools, that'll be even better, because now they have friends on their side. So help them build their supports at school at their level. So that's what I would say to somebody who asked that question about ostracizing.
Well, thank you. And just to there are other questions also, but what I want to do is, the other questions have really long answers. So someone asked me, what are we doing as CoHNA to combat some of these things? There are many initiatives that we're working on. We have an initiative on caste and the things that are going on around that, so you can join that. We also have an initiative on the whole, the depiction of swastika. There's an initiative going on there too. There's also an initiative on educational resources. So many things you can get involved in. The best way to do that is to just get involved somewhere and take it from there. This whole idea that the grand narrative of things will change, it's not just going to change overnight. It may not even change ever, but we got to continue to educate people. If we make a difference every day, that makes sense. From a litigation perspective, we don't have a problem pursuing litigation, but just so everybody knows, litigation is very expensive. And if we had millions of dollars, naturally we would pursue litigation against certain types of elements, whether it's on the school side or individuals, etc. But we don't have that money. In fact, no single Hindu organization has millions of dollars laying around, unfortunately. So when you compare the Anti-Defamation League or the American Jewish Committee or the Pacific Legal Foundation, all these different names out there, they have not a couple of $1 million. They have like literally hundreds of millions of dollars, right? $90 million, $180 million. Those are their budgets. So going in, and they have lawyers on staff. Unfortunately, on our end, from a community perspective, a lot of our people go in STEM. And even in the law side, they end up in real estate law. They may end up in like corporate law, things like that. But hardly some people go into civil rights law, criminal law, civil rights law. So it's very hard to find Hindu lawyers. And when you do find them, they don't want to do pro bono work as far as this type of stuff is concerned. We do have, thankfully, some community members who have been helping us on contract law, getting in touch with some types of lawyers. But if you look at the Islamic organizations or Jewish organizations or even Sikhs, right? You have people who are on staff taking a lower salary and really fighting for their community. We don't have that. No single Hindu organization in America or in Canada has that I am aware of. And I've been around for a little while. I don't see it. In order to change that, we have to fund these organizations. So obviously we welcome donations. We also not just welcome a few $100 of donations, but create a fundraiser where I'm happy to come down anywhere in America, fly down. If you can create a fundraiser, happy to do that, and then raise money and then go after some of these things. But we can't do that until we have the cash, right? It's very plain and simple. It's a money game. Ultimately, when the moment you have a lawyer on your payroll, lawyer that's coming to as a retainer, you're talking about thousands of dollars just to start with, right? Some of these good lawyers charge you $1,000 an hour, things like that. So just start to think about from that perspective when we ask questions about, well, what organizations are working on this stuff. So that's there. And then to change the grand narrative is a long game. It's not a short game. We got to keep doing what we need to do, engage with people, things like that. So I want to make sure that people understand the context of these things. That's why we're having these conversations, that you can take the information here and then take it out and engage, not in the echo chamber, as Deepa mentioned earlier, but going out and really engaging with the non-Hindus, the school district, the school systems, become part of the boards, become part of the city councils. You have to be the change. You can't expect other people to be the change. If you're not going to make this happen, Somebody else is not going to come and save you in that sense. So don't wait for a savior to come on a white horse or something and save you like a Bollywood movie. You have to be the change, and you have to make the change happen. And I am willing to do that. I'm willing to work with people. If you are willing to join us, then please do. So I want to, come down to start to conclude, maybe a 1-minute summary of some thoughts, what recommendations you may have for parents and students. We'll start from Richa, then Sakshi, then Sukanya ji, and finally Deepa.
Sure. I think that most importantly, it's important to teach children and peers and know what they're going through and sort of understand the situation and always be welcoming of ideas and topics that they're talking about, and just let them know early on that this is what might happen and this is how you can combat that.
Yes, of course. I think just kind of echoing that as well. Thankfully, I had a very strong support system from my parents. They were really willing and they were pushing me forward to do this. But I know that there are some instances where some parents are really concerned and they want their students, academic reputation to really stay afloat, to have good grades, just to maintain that equilibrium and all of that. So I think that it's really important to stress and kind of bring into the limelight that do not be afraid to speak up for the injustices that occur, because as you all may have heard, that the person who is witnessing the crime that's occurring is also just participating the same in the crime as the perpetuator as well. So I think that it's really crucial to really support your kids and find some resources. At universities, there's the DEI organization, or the board, which is just the diversity, equity, and inclusion organization. So that's where they handle those complaints. You can report a bias incident. You can also go to your advisor or your counselor. So I think that parents should really be on top of that and really just do some research and support their children as a whole.
Wow. I love having, being on this panel with the two young ladies here. I was definitely not so aware when I was your age, I'll tell you that. But it's wonderful to see that that's who we have coming up. And like you said, support. You said, Sakshi, that your parents were your support. So be that support. I would speak to the parents. Be aware, be observant, and respond to more than just the academic. Of course, you're going to do that. As Indians, that's part of who we are. We do emphasize academics, and that should be okay. But once they go out, they will learn, they'll need to learn how to negotiate. They'll need to learn how to compromise. They'll need to learn how to, deal with the problems that they need to mitigate. So teach them early. The more practice they get, the better it is. The more practice you get dealing with uncomfortable things around your child, the more you'll teach your child also that it's okay. It feels uncomfortable, but it's okay. I can talk about it and I can gain support. So as a parent, get the support, reach out to organizations, reach out to your friends and talk about it, and get the support. And especially for special needs kids, this is one thing I wanted to say, is find out there are organizations in the community, in your community, that have ombudsmen who will at no cost come and be there with you through certain specific things, whether you're setting up an IEP meeting or what have you. Be that support and an advocate and speak for you and your family and your child. So use those things. And be open to telling other and demystifying who you are and what you are and the culture that you come from, because people attack things they don't understand or are unusual or different. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
And Deepa, finally.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Nikunj, thank you again to Hindu Parents Network as well as CoHNA for this platform. A couple of things I will just reiterate. The first thing is, I think it's relevant to all of the members who've joined us today that Richa and Sakshi are really a symbolic cry for help. And I think we should not be failing them. They have come here on this particular panel and spoken very, very bravely about their experiences so that we as adults can sort of draw from it and understand what we need to do next. There are nearly 2.3 or 2.5 million Hindus in America today. And if we're still not able to step up and help these children, help our children, I think we are going to ultimately fail in our larger pursuit. So let's all keep an eye on this very important message that Sakshi and Richa have brought. The three things that as I said, is please engage with your communities consistently. It's very important to build those networks, build allies. We can no longer afford to live in our microcosm. We have to start reaching out. We are the ones who are breaking in. So the effort has to come from us. That is one. The second thing is build consistently. Build across your towns, your counties, your, if you live in a larger city, your boroughs, or whatever that is, build networks of your people. There are enough like-minded Hindus. Everyone is looking for a friend to band with and to sort of build that network. So be consistent with those networks. And lastly, please take away action items that will bring about meaningful change. Nikunj touched upon a very important point, saying that most of us, and I am the only one on this panel, as you can see, did not go to school here. I came to this country with a daughter. So, I came very late in life here. But I'd like to say that it's very important as a parent to understand that for us, for parents who have not grown up in this system, we cannot totally identify with the experiences that some of our children are having. So it's very important that we don't dismiss them. We continue to take meaningful actions from them and build on it. Please, lastly, work with organizations that are willing to bring change, donate generously. If you can't donate actively, donate your time and effort, and engage in conversations on a regular basis.
Awesome. With that, I want to thank all the panelists for joining us, as well as all the attendees. These conversations will continue, and want to make sure that everyone understands to visit hinduparentsnetwork.org to sign up for our support group and also to volunteer. You can donate at www.cohna.org, COHNA.org. And of course, I want to have a special thank you for Richa and Sakshi for being brave and coming to the panel and contributing your thoughts and experiences. So thank you to all, and namaste, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.